Have you ever stopped to ask yourself if the love you idealize is real or just a poorly written script for movies and soap operas? Because if you still believe in that happily ever after, without commas, without pauses, and without conflicts, this video will move you. The truth is that many of us were taught to wait for a fairy tale, but what no one tells us is that off-screen, the prince also has flaws, the princess gets tired, and the castle charges property taxes. Here we talk about what no. One talks about the silent frustrations, the broken expectations, and that moment when you look in the mirror and think, is this what I deserve? This isn't a video about giving up on love, it's about waking up to it. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why so many incredible women are starting to see the perfect relationship with new eyes. And before continuing, comment here now, perfect if you still believe in fairy tale marriage, or real if you have already understood that true love does not always have a happy ending, but it can be much more authentic. I really want to know which side you're on. Joanna has always been one of those dreamy women, the type who grew up watching afternoon movies with a sparkle in her eyes, believing that one day true love would knock on her door with flowers in her hands and promises of a perfect future. When she met Daniel, she was sure it was destiny finally smiling on her. He was attentive, praised every detail, made surprises, and most importantly, knew exactly what to say. Before long, Joanna found herself involved in a rosy world where everything seemed to finally fall into place. She gave herself with intensity, as many of us do when we believe we have found the one who will fill the empty spaces, heal the old wounds, and make it all worth it. Her friends told her to take it easy, but how can you slow down when your heart is already racing? She dove in head first because she learned that love requires surrender, and for a while it seemed like everything made sense, but as happens with many women who blindly believe in idealized love, reality began to show signs that that castle had cracks. First, there were small attitudes, things that she tried to ignore. He cancelled last-minute appointments, diminished her dreams with words disguised as concern, and little by little he began to extinguish the glow that he himself had helped to light. Joanna began to realize that this charming man knew how to manipulate emotions with the same ease with which he praised her in the beginning. It was as if, suddenly, she had stopped being a priority and had become an option. Still, she insisted, justified, tried to find in past gestures an excuse for present behaviors, because that's what we do when we believe the problem is ours. When he said she was overreacting, she doubted herself. When he disappeared for days and then came back as if nothing had happened, she accepted it, because no one teaches us to recognize an emotionally abusive relationship when it comes disguised as romanticism. And the most painful thing was realizing that, deep down, she wasn't happy anymore. She was just trying to keep an illusion alive. It was only after many hidden tears, sleepless nights, and that constant feeling of feeling small that Joanna finally understood. It wasn't love, it was emotional dependence. It was the fear of starting over, of admitting that I had made a mistake. It was the shame of having bet all my chips on someone who didn't even deserve half of it. And in that moment of rupture, she looked in the mirror and said to herself, I deserve more. And that's when her true love story began, with herself. Because before finding someone who completes us, we need to feel whole. Today, Joanna understands that healthy love does not control, does not hurt, does not erase. It adds, supports, and drives. The pain served as fuel for a new chapter of his life, much more conscious, stronger, and truer. And maybe you, who are watching me now, have also gone through something similar, or are going through it. If this story touched you in any way, comment below, I've experienced this. If you've ever been in a relationship that seemed perfect, but emptied you inside, or I never passed, if you haven't already experienced something like this, and I hope it never happens, I read every comment because each one of you matters. There is an idea that still dominates the minds of many women, that the perfect marriage is not only possible, but mandatory. It's as if our happiness is conditioned on finding the right man, living a conflict-free story and posting photos smiling as if life were a margarine commercial. This social pressure, fueled by films, soap operas, social networks, and even some religious discourses, creates a dangerous illusion. According to an IBGE survey, almost 40% of marriages in Brazil end in divorce within the first 10 years. This does not mean that the love is over, but that perhaps what sustained that relationship was a fragile ideal, built more on unrealistic expectations than on true connection. As psychologist Esther Perel says, romantic love is a recent invention, and yet we demand an impossible performance from it, being at the same time stability, adventure, companionship, security, and passion. No one can handle all of this all the time, and trying to maintain this standard exhausts us. The myth of the perfect marriage creates a silent trap. It makes us believe that if we are experiencing difficulties, the problem is the relationship, or worse, it is us. But there is no perfection where there are two imperfect people trying to build something lasting. And there is no mistake in that. The mistake is in thinking that conflicts, crises, difficult phases, or even disagreements are signs of failure. Real relationships are built in the mess of everyday life, in constant adaptation, in difficult conversations that require vulnerability and listening. Forever is not automatic. It is the fruit of work, conscious choices, and emotional disposition. And yes, sometimes the best thing we can do is have the courage to recognize when the relationship is no longer making us grow, because healthy love doesn't hold you back, it expands you. The excessive romanticization of marriage prevents many women from seeing their own value outside of the role of wife. And this is something that needs to change urgently. Often, the idea of an idealized marriage serves as an emotional crutch. The woman endures more than she should, silences deep pain and swallows frustrations because she believes that this is the price of true love. But it's not. The truth is that a healthy relationship can be challenging, but it should never be suffocating. You don't need to give up your identity, your dreams, and your peace to support a script of perfection that only exists on social media. It's liberating to understand that there is no perfect couple. There are people willing to grow together, and that is rare and valuable. When you accept imperfection as part of the process, you stop demanding the impossible from yourself and others. You create space for real love, one that respects, welcomes, and evolves over time. And if this sentence made sense to you, write it here in the comments. Imperfection is real. Let's spread this truth and help more women break free from this unattainable standard, because the perfect marriage may not exist, but true relationships with mistakes, successes, and a lot of learning can transform our lives in a real way. The great trap in relationships is not the lack of love, but the gap between expectations and reality. We enter a relationship believing that it will be light, fun, full of affection, good sex, open dialogue, daily complicity, and unconditional support. It's what everyone dreams of, right? But then comes real life. Suddenly, that man who has been sending you romantic messages all day starts responding with a simple "bills." Conversations that used to last hours turned into an uncomfortable silence at dinner. The "good morning, love" gives way to "bring the bread." And what was enchantment becomes routine. It's not that love is over, but what was imagined to be eternal and magical now needs to survive the mess of adult life. Bills, work, tiredness, children, bills, and those dishes that never stop piling up in the sink. And then we start to wonder, could the problem be with me? Am I waiting too much? And the most sincere answer is, perhaps you are expecting something that was never promised, only idealized. The problem is that many women confuse the intense beginning of the relationship, where everything is new and adrenaline, with the pattern that it should follow forever. But the beginning is just that, beginning. When coexistence comes, the other person shows who they really are, and so do we. And then the frustrations begin. Fights over tone of voice, irritation over small things like the wet towel on the bed, hurt feelings that accumulate because no one says what they really feel. And the more you try to maintain that image of a perfect relationship, the more frustrated you become because you can't sustain something that was never real. The truth is that reality demands a maturity that expectations do not meet. The expectation is romantic, colorful, full of promises. Reality is practical, often tiring, and only survives when there is a willingness on both sides to find each other in the middle of the chaos. And that doesn't always happen. Therefore, understanding this contrast is essential to preserving your emotional health. When you accept that routine is part of it, that desire fluctuates, that the other person will not read your mind, and that romanticism is not automatic, you begin to look at your relationship with more compassion and less pressure. And most importantly, you start to look at yourself more clearly. Because deep down, many women are frustrated, not because the relationship is bad, but because they expected it to be perfect. So I ask you now, what was the most frustrating expectation you've ever had in a relationship? Tell me here in the comments with the keyword broken expectations, because I want to turn this into an upcoming video with real stories of women who, like you, are discovering that there is no soap opera love, but there can indeed be true love with all its imperfections. The truth is that what really works in a relationship has nothing to do with flowers on Valentine's Day or exaggerated statements on social media. It works when there is daily respect, when there is space for each person's individuality, and when both understand that they are there not to complete each other, but to grow together. Respect is not just about not shouting or not cheating. Respect is listening to what the other person has to say even when you disagree. It is validating the feelings of those who chose to walk alongside you. It's understanding that everyone has a story, wounds, baggage, and that true love happens when we learn to accept this without trying to change the other by force. Happy marriages are not those that have no problems, but those that choose to solve problems together. This is where building a conscious relationship begins, where there is no room for games, manipulations, or unfair demands, but rather for honest conversation, real presence, and a lot of common purpose. And when we talk about communication, we're not just talking about what to do on the weekend. We are talking about emotional courage, being able to say, "This hurts me, this makes me feel invisible, this frustrates me." And even more, knowing how to listen to these phrases without taking everything personally or turning the game around. When two people are emotionally mature enough to communicate without fear and without needing to win an argument, everything changes. The relationship becomes a safe space where you can be vulnerable without fear of being invalidated. And that, yes, is more valuable than any romanticism in a film. Purpose is also a base that strengthens. When the couple knows where they want to go, when they share values, dreams, and life projects, crises stop being threats and become phases. And yes, mutual effort is the key. A healthy relationship requires work, not hard, painful work, but the kind of effort that shows, "I choose you, even on difficult days." It's not possible for one person to carry everything on their back. When only one person is trying, love becomes imbalanced, and no one can live like this for long. Therefore, if you are looking for a true relationship, stop looking for perfection and start valuing awareness. The perfect marriage doesn't exist, but a healthy, happy relationship is entirely possible, even with imperfections, even because of them. When you find someone who's willing to grow with you, make mistakes with you, and start over with you as many times as necessary, That is worth more than any fanciful expectations. It's liberating to understand that what keeps two people together isn't magic. It's daily choice, it's real effort, it's genuine partnership. And if this vision made sense to you, comment below, conscious relationship. This not only helps the video reach more women who need to hear this message, but it also shows that you are ready to live something real, with purpose, with dialogue, with respect, and with freedom to be who you are, because you deserve a love that is not ideal but that is true. The moment of truth has arrived, and it may hurt a little, but it's liberating. The perfect marriage that we learn to idealize simply doesn't exist. It is a social construct fueled by centuries of fairy tales, Hollywood films, and unrealistic standards of behavior. What exists, and this is powerful, are two people willing to face each other, understand each other, and choose each other, even on days when everything seems difficult. And I know this might not sound as romantic as that happy ending with the soundtrack and golden light at dusk, but it is 1,000 times more authentic, stronger, and more valuable. Real relationships have days of tiredness, moments of silence, phases of doubt, but there is also forgiveness, new beginnings, and small victories that no one sees, but that keep everything standing. True love doesn't live by appearance. It lives by choice. And if there's one thing I learned from listening to so many stories of strong women like you, it's that the extraordinary is precisely in the ordinary, in those who decide to try every day, even without being sure of anything. Accepting this truth is the first step to stop being frustrated with unattainable expectations. There is no perfect script, much less a universal manual on how to love. Each couple writes their story, with what they have, flaws, fears, limits, but also with courage, affection, and a real desire to grow together. And you know what else? Sometimes growing together means recognizing that the other person no longer belongs to you. This is also love. It's love for yourself, because maintaining a real relationship requires more than simply being together. It requires awareness. It's about having the maturity to accept that some phases will be difficult, that others won't always understand you, that there will be disagreements. But it also means being willing to go back, talk, adjust, and choose again. Conscious love is not about perfection. It is about commitment to the truth, to each other, and to yourself. Even when everything seems to fall apart, it's still worth trying if you're both willing. And if they're not, that's okay too, because you weren't born to beg for affection. You were born to live with fullness and truth. So if you believe in this love that doesn't pretend, that doesn't follow a script, that doesn't need to be perfect, but that is real because it's always trying, I invite you to leave a comment here now. Trying every day. Let's show that authenticity still counts, that conscious and imperfect relationships can be extraordinary, that there is beauty in trying, strength in vulnerability, and a lot of value in continuing, even without certainty. You are not alone on this journey. There are a legion of women waking up every day and choosing love with more truth and less illusion. And if this video touched you in any way, share it. Because the more we talk about it, the more liberating it becomes to love our way, imperfect but real. If this video made you rethink what real love is, hold on tight, because the next one will open your mind even more. Many people live believing that living together in a marriage is simple, that all you need to do is love and everything will be resolved. But that's not the case. In the next episode, I'll show you what nobody talks about: the routine, the friction, the silences, and the reconciliations. Because it's easy to love on good days, it's difficult to build a partnership on bad days. So subscribe here to the channel, activate the bell, and guarantee that you will be with me on this journey of reflection and emotional maturity. We're not here just to talk about relationships. We're here to live with more awareness, more self-esteem, and less illusion. What you do with this content today can transform the way you love tomorrow. And if you've come this far, it's because you're ready to take this next step. with courage and truth. Now, I ask you something very important. Share this video with that friend who still believes that marriage is like in the movies. Let's wake these people up and spread this message of real and conscious love. And of course, comment below what struck you most about this video. I want to hear you, know your story, your vision. This space is for us to grow together. If you identified yourself, felt touched, right? Conscious relationship, broken expectations, or trying every day, because every comment from you helps bring this conversation to more women who need to hear this truth. Remember, there is no ready-made manual, but there is a possible path. And this path begins when we choose ourselves every day without clinging to the ideal, but opening up to what is real. So come with me, because the next video is going to be a game changer. Shall we continue this conversation? I'll wait for you there.